have been very fortunate in my district to have somebody that is a representative in every way. He truly represents our conservative principles, not only in office and in Congress, but as a person in the way he leads his life. And I don't care what you say, who you are as a person determines what type of person you will be in office. Since day one, Congressman Jordan has been a huge supporter of the Tea Party and our movement. On more than one occasion, he has called us the Cavalry and has not backed down in his support of the Tea Party movement. And I can honestly say that it would be a lot easier to be the Cavalry if we had more people like Congressman Jordan leading the charge. So it is my pleasure this morning to introduce Congressman Jim Jordan, Chairman of the RSC.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Hey, Jenny Beth. Marianne, thank you. Marianne is doing great work in our state. Knowing her and her family and had the privilege of representing them the last several years. The district got changed a little bit, so I no longer get the Gesicki family, but thank you for all your great work in Ohio, and Jenny Beth and Kelly and Kevin and your team and all of you. God bless you. You are the energy in American politics. In spite of what happened last week, you still are the energy, and you're the ones making a difference for this great country. Let me just do a couple things, and I'll be brief, and then I'll give you an opportunity to, I assume you're going to have several members of Congress talking. I know we got a couple freshman members in here somewhere. You'll get a chance to yell at me and ask questions. I tell every single group I get a chance to speak to, we have this amazing thing in America called the First Amendment, and you get to exercise it at the appropriate time, and you're allowed to, even though I don't represent many of you, maybe not any of you now that Marianne's no longer in our district, nevertheless, you pay my salary. So you can ask any question you want, and you can yell at me in just a few minutes. I always like to start from this. Remember, it's still the greatest country in the world. It really is. And let me tell you just two quick things that happened to me in the last several months that highlight this. During the campaign, obviously the presidential candidates were in our state of Ohio all the time. We were in Marion, Ohio. This would have been 9 days before the election. Marion County Fairgrounds, small town in the middle of our district. 5,000 people crammed into this facility. They had to turn people away. And I'll never forget this. Oak Ridge Boys were the entertainment that evening, and they sang Amazing Grace a cappella, and every single person, 5,000 people, standing up in that arena, singing all three verses of Amazing Grace. Literally, there were people who had tears rolling down their face when they were thinking about this great country. There is an amazing group of people across this country who understand what you understand, and understand the principles that make us a great nation. That same evening, in fact, the young lady, a high school student, was doing the national anthem. She was a talented vocalist, but you really couldn't hear her because, again, 5,000 people stood up and sang the national anthem. I mean, so we always got to start from that premise. We got some big fights and big issues, but it's a great country. In fact, a few months back, my wife Polly and I, we had the opportunity. I've been sharing this a lot because it just stuck with me. We had the opportunity. We live north of Dayton, 35, 40 miles, but we have some friends in the Dayton area who invited us to come down, go to dinner that evening, but before we went to dinner, they wanted to tour the Wright brothers' home. And we said, sure. We happened to have that afternoon and evening open, and several couples that we were friends with were there, and we thought it'd be a good evening. Plus, we like old homes. Our home is built, our personal home is built in 1837, so we love the old homes, other than the fact they always cost a lot of money, and you always got to do something to them. But so we went through it was about an hour and a half tour, and it was amazing. You go through the home, you learn about the family, and all. It was a good. The tour guide did a great job. But what stuck with me was the last room. In the last room, they show you two pictures. Now think about this. The first picture they hold up and show you is 1903, Kitty Hawk, that first flight. Picture we all remember from school. And it took you back. I remember that, studying about that, learning about. They flew like 100 feet. And you're thinking, wow, that's amazing. There it was, 1903. They put that picture down. The next picture they hold up, 1947. 44 years later, Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier. Now think about that. In 44 years, this country made up of the kind of people who can fly first 100 feet, but 44 years later, break the sound barrier. And frankly, they should have showed us a third picture. They didn't. But they should have put that second picture down, held up a third picture. 22 years later, a guy from our state stepped on the moon. So think about this nation. From 1903 to 1960, 66 years, this country went from flying 100 feet to putting a man on the moon. So don't tell me it's not a great nation. It's the greatest country ever, and it is always worth defending. So I just got a couple quick points I would I guess make to all of you. You can never go wrong defending principle, right? Never go wrong doing that. I mean, look, there are certain things that are fundamental, and it's you know, you can run down the list of economic concerns. Good tax policy makes sense. We shouldn't be raising taxes on Americans. Americans are already overtaxed, right? Fixing the tax code. How many of you think I do this now every group I talk to? How many of you think we need a new tax code? Anyone think that makes sense? You know, I mean, think about this simple fact. Any tax code on the personal side, which allows approximately 50% of the population not to participate in the main tax, is broken. Any tax code on the corporate side, which says to American companies, you're going to pay the highest corporate tax rate in the world, is stupid. So if it's broken and stupid, you might want to start over, right? Yeah. So, again, just fundamental principles. You can't keep spending more than you take in, right? You all understand that. I told a group the other day, I'll let you all in on a little secret. We're going to have to cut spending, right? Imagine that. Imagine that. We've actually introduced the last several years of budgets that actually get to balance. I get the privilege of chairing the conservative group in Congress called the Republican Study Committee. I get to chair it for a few more months, and we've introduced those because you got to cut spending. I share this story too. How many of you remember the movie 1776? You ever watch that show? One of my favorites, our family's favorite. All right, so it's the storyline. Of course, it's a musical. Storyline is the founders, when they actually draft the Declaration and declare to the world why this place will be different, why this place will be a place where liberty and freedom actually matter. And you know, Adams is the driving force behind it. He's the main character in the production. The scene that I'll never forget, I think the most compelling scene in many ways in the show, is they've drafted the Declaration. It's now time to mark it up, doing what Congresses do, doing what legislators do. They mark up the bill. So they're amending, correcting, and deleting, and adding into the document. And someone stands up and says, well, you know, we may want to change this particular line because our beef is primarily with the king, not with Parliament, and we may want to change how we say this and not be so direct here. And Adams is back there rolling his eyes like, let's go, let's get on with it, I want to have the vote. Second member stands up and says, yeah, even though our beef is with the king, we may not want to use this strong a language. We may want to tone it down a little bit because, you know, we got to just be careful here. And Adams is like, come on. You know. Finally, a third member stands up and he mentions something about, well, we got to be concerned about this particular paragraph because of our deep-sea fishing rights off the coast of New England. And finally, Adams can't take it any longer. And he stands up and says, it's a revolution, dang it. We're going to have to offend somebody, right? So the point is, we're going broke. You're going to have to cut spending. You got a debt bigger than your GDP. This year, we're going to spend about $230 billion in interest to service that humongous debt at a time when interest rates are record low. They're going to go up. At some point, you just can't sustain it. So you can never go wrong defending principles that we need the right kind of tax policy. We need to keep taxes low. We need to get spending under control. We need a common sense energy policy. We need common sense regulation. We need a sound money doctrine. You can't keep printing the money like the Fed is doing right now. And frankly, also to those principles, you got to remember some basics. The sanctity of life does matter. The key institution in our culture is the family. The strength of that institution determines the strength of our entire society. The work ethic matters, and we should reinforce and promote that. Free markets work, as freedom works. So we need to remember those things as we go. You can never go wrong doing that. The other thing I will tell you this, and to the legislators who are here, and all of you who are activists in this great movement, every General Assembly, every legislative session, every Congress, there are only a couple of fights that actually matter. There really are. My guess is you can pick them right now. It's going to be in this upcoming, the 113th Congress, it's going to be the CR, which is the spending fight, the budget fight, which is going to come due at the end of March, and it's going to be the debt ceiling issue, just like it was in the last Congress. Imagine that. And the fights typically are about the money. There's a lot of little things that are kind of important and sort of important, and they are important, but the ones that really matter, and that's where we need to focus. That's where we need to make a difference for the American people. Finally, this. We're going to be criticized. Look, I tell my colleagues all the time, if the press isn't saying something bad about you, you're not doing anything good. So just remember, we're going to be criticized. I love the line Cal Thomas has, syndicated columnist. He writes a great column. He's talking about how normal people see things and how the elite national press views things, talking about the New York Times and the Washington Post and normal folks from across the country. He has a great line. He says, I get up every morning, I read my Bible and the New York Times so I can see what each side's up to. So just understand, we are going to be criticized as we stand up for those principles that matter. Finally, I'll say two last things here. And this is important, I think, for us to understand and keep in the context for those of us who are in the Congress and for all of us who are citizens who care about this country. This is not just another Democrat in the White House. I think we make a mistake if we just view President Obama as just part of the natural ebb and flow of American politics. This guy's different. This guy he just does not see things the way I think are in the best interest of this country at all. And we need to understand that. I mean, think about this guy's position on religious liberty. Think about this Justice Department. Think about the actions, or frankly, the lack of actions this administration took, and the fact that 4 Americans lost their lives in Libya. I mean, I'm on the committee that had the opportunity 5-6 weeks ago to look into the before, what took place prior to the attack on September 11th in the Oversight Committee. And if you look at that fact pattern, it's amazing. 230 security incidences in the 13 months prior to the attack. Twice they actually bombed the consulate. They were seeing what it was going to take to break the wall. They tried to assassinate the British ambassador repeatedly. Colonel Wood and Eric Nordstrom, the guys on the ground, the professionals on the ground in charge of security, repeatedly they asked for additional help. They were not only denied additional help, they had some of it taken away. And one of the questions I asked the witnesses, Lieutenant Colonel Wood and Nordstrom, and then we had the 2 folks in Washington, part of the Department of State, who made the decision not to give them what they wanted. As I asked the folks in Washington, first I went down the list and I said, Lieutenant Colonel Wood, how long have you been in Libya? 8 months. Colonel Eric Nordstrom, how long have you been in Libya? How long were you in Libya? 9 months. Miss Lamb, one of the people who made the decision, how many trips have you made to Libya? 0. Undersecretary Kennedy, how many trips have you made? 0. Then I asked the 2 folks in Washington who made the decision. I said, you think these guys are professionals, think they know what they're doing? Yes. Well, they repeatedly asked you for help, and you denied it. And there were 230 security incidences. They bombed our consulate. I said, what was it going to take? 250? 500? What was it going to take before you gave them what they wanted, what they needed, what professionals on the ground who know the situation actually needed to protect American citizens? What was it going to take? And then I turned back to the good guys who gave us the information, the whistleblowers, and I said, were you pulling your hair out? Were you flabbergasted? So that was the before. Now we've since learned about what took place during, and of course what took place after with the charade of this video. So it's a mistake to view this administration as just part of the natural flow in American politics. I really think. And so that, I think, should energize us to continue to do what we have to do to win. Finally, this. Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:7, my favorite scripture verse. Keep this in mind as we engage in this battle. Paul writes to Timothy, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the course, I have kept the faith. And it's a great verse for America. It's a great verse for all of us, particularly at this moment in American history. Fight the fight, finish the course, keep the faith. When we do that, good things happen. I mean, it's a verse of action, and the American people have always been a people of action. I would argue this is one of those, what I call moments of magnitude. Think about in your own life. Think about your family. There are moments you will never forget. Polly and I have been married 27 years. I'll never forget the day we were married. We got 4 kids. I'll never forget. Our kids are all involved in sports. Our boys wrestle. I'll never forget some of the big matches they were involved in. They got the takedown in the last 10 seconds to win that. I will never forget those moments. We just had our first grandchild 18 days ago. I'll never forget that day. We're going to see her tomorrow for the first time. They live in Colorado Springs. I will never forget that tomorrow. And you can think about in your own life, moments, goals you had when you accomplished things that matter. I would argue sometimes those moments of significance, those moments of magnitude take on a broader context and they apply to an entire nation. We're at one of those moments, one of those critical moments where the country is really, really counting on the right thing taking place and people stepping up and doing what Americans have done for generation after generation. That is our charge, to fight the good fight, finish the course, and keep the faith. And if we do that, America will be strong for our kids and our grandkids as we move forward. Thank you, and God bless you. Do we do questions? Or? Okay. I guess we do have time for a couple questions, so.
Hello. Time for a couple questions. I'm going to ask you a quick question. With the media and the Democrats touting polling that shows that a majority of Americans would like to see tax increases as a balanced way to address the deficit, how do we fight that as activists? And advice to the new freshmen, how are they supposed to fight that call for increase in taxes?
I think you got to get out there and talk about principles. And as I said in my remarks, it's never wrong to defend principles. If you think, I mean, how many of you think Americans are undertaxed? I mean, so I think you got to lay out, and I would also lay out this fundamental. I bet you ask a lot of people who actually voted for President Obama, you go ask them, do you think the federal government needs more money? Do you think the bureaucratic federal government, the redundancy, the waste, all the things, all the agencies, do you really think the government in Washington needs more of your money? And so start with those kind of fundamental questions and make the case. I think that's always the best argument. And that's certainly what I've been doing as I've talked to reporters and a host of other people in the last week and a half. That's what we got to focus on.
It's my belief that the founders dictated or articulated the knowledge that we need to use to budget our spending through Congress. And I think with the founding principles, we need to understand that we don't need an amendment or a resolution to do that, but we need the action of Congress.
Well said.
Because that's where we need to go. Is that correct?
Well said. Yeah, I frankly would like both. You'd like to have the discipline of members to do what they're supposed to do, and that little extra, as my father used to say, that little friendly persuasion that dads sometimes give their sons. Sometimes you need that in the form of a constitutional amendment. So I would argue for both. But what you mostly need is you need discipline from elected officials. I may have shared this with some of you before, but it's one of my other favorite statements. It was actually made by my high school wrestling coach, who was super guy. He was the best teacher in our school, the toughest wrestling coach in the state, taught chemistry and physics. He used to talk about discipline every day in class and in the wrestling room. In class, he would say, hey, Jordan, this is not any old class. This is chemistry. You want to do well in my class? You might have to have a little discipline about reading the material, preparing the night before, participating in class. And in the wrestling room, oh my goodness, he was like, hey, self-discipline is the most important character quality necessary to accomplish anything of meaning, anything of significance. You need discipline. And I was like, shut up. You sound like my dad. You're driving me crazy. But it was the truth. And our wrestling room, Coach McCunn has passed on. Wonderful Christian man, passed on a few years ago. Our wrestling room is named after him at our high school. And the sign hangs right below the Ron McCunn Wrestling Room banner. The sign hangs with this statement: discipline's doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. And basically that meant doing it Coach's way when you'd rather do it your way. It means doing it the right way when you'd rather do it the convenient way. And Congress is all about doing things the convenient way. At some point, like right now, we're going to have to start doing them the right way. So that's exactly what doing things the right way is, what will get you to a balanced budget. All right.
Okay, that's actually it. I'm sorry, I was just told we don't have any more time. Great. Because we have some other congressional speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.